far and wide.
There he is. Hey,
Hello, Jeremy.
Gosh, you look younger.
Gentlemen, hello.
Hello, Jeremy. How's Jeremy today?
Oh, just fine. Doing well. I'm following now on the heels of the weekly family Zoom meeting that some of us Flanagans do.
I forgot about that.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot to do back to back, so. But Granddad should be joining momentarily. How are you guys?
I think all of us so far seems like we're doing okay.
Good.
I was just talking to Gordon. He saw on Facebook about our fire museum in Jeffersonville, and we had a muster a couple of weeks ago, and we just bought a building across the street. We're making an education center out of it. We've got more old fire trucks, and you can imagine. Our oldest fire truck, one of the oldest in the country, is 1756.
Oh my goodness.
Older than the United States of America. And it works.
I need to come down and see that, Vic. I'd be very interested in that.
Yeah. Next time any of you are down, I'll give you the grand tour.
Yeah, I'd love to see all of that. This is the project I think you alluded to last month. You had a meeting, or you were scheduling a meeting for maybe this project.
Yes. Yeah, we've been in this present location now for about 8 years, but we keep expanding, and people keep wanting to donate their old fire truck, but we're telling them no unless it's something special. We don't have room for it. We've got 10 in storage over in Louisville, and we've got, I forget how many we have now or on site. We've got 2 buildings now. Bob Mason coming on board. Hi, Bob.
Hello. He's connecting to audio.
Connecting to audio. Okay.
Vic, do you have any Seagrave
Oh, yeah.
fire trucks?
That's
Next step is to adjust the camera angle.
Got what now?
Adjust the camera angle would be the next step.
Oh, Bob Mason, adjust your camera angle. That's better.
There you go.
Right there you are, Bob.
Hi, is everyone?
Hi, Bob.
Yeah,
Where's Mike?
He should be joining momentarily. And now
I'm sorry I missed the meeting before because I forget when it is. Why don't you, not to ask that shouldn't be your responsibility, but if you could warn me ahead of time so that I'd have it in my head to join.
Sure, I'd be happy to. We just talked about you the whole time.
Do that.
Vic, I know you had come to the Proctor House grand opening, I guess that was last year, about a year ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like your Historical Society efforts and the Crawford County Historical Society efforts, there might be some overlap of interest there. I don't know if some of the members in Crawford County would, if you'd want to promote something that you guys have going on. I mean, I think there'd be opportunity to kind of share that with the membership, especially if you have something big, a big relocation or exhibit or what have you.
Yes. We make sure that any of our events are put in the local Clarion paper. So, and most everybody in Crawford gets a Clarion because it's free. I think it hits every mailbox in Crawford County. Unfortunately, I have to pay for my subscription because the freebies end at Edwardsville, which is right on the cusp of the Knobs. And down in the valley where I live in New Albany, you have to pay for a subscription, which is okay.
Well, is that just for home delivery? I mean, can you go to sort of pick up points and get a free copy?
Yes, I could drive out to Edwardsville and get a copy every week in local grocery stores and things, but I might not do that. Now, the section that I always enjoy reading was 10 years ago, 25 years ago, 50 years ago, and so forth. But since the pandemic, they're not doing that. They're not putting that in there. I don't know why, but and another section, letters to the editor. They're not putting that in there anymore. So the newspaper has shrunk somewhat.
Vic, I think that's called the year the world stood still.
No, it was
Boy.
bigger when a lady by the name of Martha Jane Flanigan was the editor, and she was a little bit of everything, wasn't she, John?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. She kind of got shanghaied into it. There was nobody left to do it.
Well, you're right. There wasn't.
I
Now-
was supposed to do, and I escaped. Went into the-
Back to what Jeremy said, the Proctor House. Oh, we've lost one, and we're gaining one. Hello, Michael Pale.
Is it Victor Megenity?
Yes, sir, Michael. How you doing, buddy?
Sir.
I'm back.
Anyway, the Proctor House was built, I believe, in 1837, and it's an almost duplicate of our Floyd County Museum that was also built in 1837. They're both federal style, two-story buildings, and our building was given to us by a guy had bought it and was getting ready to tear it down. And we went to him and said, oh, that's one of the older brick houses in New Albany. We convinced him. We said we would even call it the Floyd County Historical Society Paget Museum. His last name was Paget. His wife thought that would be a good idea. So they donated it to us about 8 or 9 years ago.
Very neat.
Yeah.
Well, up here in northern Indiana, there's a very well-established, successful historical society in New Carlisle. But I've not been, but I've heard that Du Bois County has a very good museum. Now, I don't know if that's affiliated with a historical society, but
I'm not sure either. The Historic Landmarks of Indiana, Greg Sekula is the director for several counties in our area. He was the go-to guy at the Proctor House and the go-to guy at our building 8, 9 years ago. So he coordinated a lot of the efforts and helped write grants and things like that to save both buildings.
very neat.
Bob, have you heard anything from Lowell Parks?
No, I haven't.
He went in for an operation about 4 or 5 months ago. It was a valve operation, I think, in his heart. And his wife called me and said he was doing okay after the operation, but he used to come to our breakfasts. We used to have English high school graduate breakfasts in Clarksville. And we started out 20 years ago with about 16 or 18 people. And now there's only 2 of us that have been coming, Tyler and me. Most of them have passed on.
Yeah.
Lowell Parks was one that did come, but he hadn't come since he had that operation.
There is a fairly new procedure for replacing the aortic valve endoscopically. They just go in with a catheter and release that valve into the aortic valve, and the next day you're home feeling great. I know some people who've had the procedure.
How about that?
It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's great.
I have something that may be of interest to you. I earlier this year joined a group called National Sojourners. It is master masons who have taken the military oath, and that's the one requirement, that you have taken that oath. And we have a subsidiary organization called Heroes of 76, and we recently took in to the Heroes of 76 if you can see that picture.
Yes.
That is Sammy Davis Jr., Medal of Honor recipient. He's a good friend of mine, and I am Secretary Treasurer of the 33rd Association, and Sammy is a member of that. And it was really an honor to work with Sammy and do a little initiation for him. And he was very gracious about it. We do wear the at some of our meetings for the Heroes of 76. We wear the colonial uniforms. My uniform is John Paul Jones Navy uniform. It's colonial in nature. This is a picture. It was on our front page of our magazine at the Shrine. 3 of us in the picture are or have been chairman of one of the Shriners hospitals. Chicago for me, and then there's one from Cincinnati, one for Lexington. This is when I made a donation on behalf of one of our organizations at the Chicago Shriners Hospital. And this, I think you will recognize Highland Overlook.
What?
Marion and I were sitting on that rock in 1956 with my brother Frank and Donnie Owens being there that day.
Wow.
So that's been a while.
Mike, do you remember Highland Overlook, the little park out the edge of English?
Highland Overlook?
Yes, I remember Highland Overlook, sure.
Yeah. I think as I recall, it was maybe a parking place or something.
That's what I've heard. I have heard that.
Be careful, Vic. We're not supposed to reveal any secrets here.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting.
Oh, I think it was common knowledge. Very common.
Is
That
that
it was parking, yeah, but not
kind of near the
parking.
old Thornberry residence?
Say that again, Jeremy.
Is that park near the old Thornberry residence?
No.
Yeah,
Go
it's on the-
south out of town a couple
Oh,
miles.
it's real close to it. It's about a mile on up the road, and not even a mile up
Okay.
the road toward Grantsburg a little way.
Now, John, who carved out that stone in front of the Thornberry home?
I don't know who carved it out. My great grandfather put it in, but
Been there
I
as
guess-
long as I can remember.
he must have had somebody carve it. But I've never heard any name mentioned.
Vic, though, that's not the house I'm talking about. I'm talking about the
No,
farm,
you're talking about the farm out south of town. Yeah,
which
Oh.
I think burned down, right?
I couldn't say. Ralph Grant bought it, from Granddad Thornberry, and then I noticed looking at Google Earth, it's been developed a lot. There's a road that goes back, and there's more buildings, and it's very much different from the way it used to be. Granddad had an apple orchard back there, big, many acres of apple orchard.
I remember that. I used to hunt mushrooms back there, and I did find several mushrooms on that farm.
Yeah, he had almost a full section of land. He had a sharecropper that lived in a house down over the hill, right across from the Inlow, where Guinea Inlow had his milk, his dairy farm.
Yeah.
And across the street on down was a guy. His name was Tom. That's all I remember. But I remember it was I'm talking about from the point of view of a real young kid, maybe 6 or 8 years old. And I thought it was interesting that Tom didn't pay any rent. He just shared the product that he grew, the corn and soybeans and stuff. So I thought, that's a cool idea.
Sure.
You mentioned the Inlow farm. Is that the one on the sharp right-hand turn as you would be headed to Grantsburg?
It's on the left. It's on the left, just before that really sharp turn.
Right. Yeah. And then
you go up-
then you have that long flat stretch where you can dry out your car.
Yes, right.
And that's what I did with my first car. It was a 1933 Chevy Coupe. I bought it from Temp Bar, $60. And I thought I would try that flat space, and I was going maybe a little fast, and I saw lights behind me. I pulled over, and a trooper walked up, and he said, I said, "Hi, Bomber." And he said, "Oh, Gordon, I didn't know that was you." He said, "What do you have under the hood?" I said, "It's just a stock engine, first year for the overhead valves." He said, "Well, it runs." He said, "What about the brakes?" He said, "Are they mechanical?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You have to adjust them about every week?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You think you ought to slow it down?" I said, "Yes."
Who was the trooper that got you?
Bomber Brown,
Bomber Brown, I remember him.
I don't remember him.
good man.
I remember Floyd
Tony.
Tony.
Tony. Wasn't Floyd Tony our 8th grade teacher?
No,
What was his name?
that was a Tony, but it wasn't Floyd.
Wasn't Floyd? Okay, Floyd Tony would be the so he's the one that married our English teacher, right?
Was there an Edgar Tony? Edgar Tony?
Edgar, that was
Edgar
it. Mike got that right. Edgar
Mike's
Tony.
got Edgar Tony, right?
Floyd Tony married Mildred Cummings, who was my
Right.
first cousin. And she was my first grade teacher.
Mine too.
First grade, right?
Yep.
First grade, that's right. Mildred Cummins.
Yep.
And they gave me a ride in the police car one night. Did I tell that story a couple of weeks ago?
I don't think
Yes.
so.
I was there on the corner, just accidentally ran into Mildred. The two of us were standing on the corner there by the bank, and Floyd drove up in his police car, and he was going to give her a ride. So she got in, and he asked me, "Do you want to come with us?" Stupid me, I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So got in, and we rode around the county for a couple hours. I very innocently, not realizing that I'd broken something up. But I guess it worked out all right because they went ahead and got married.
Do you remember the trooper Gibson,
Yep.
Bob Gibson?
Bob Gibson.
He had been in Perry County before, and then he went up to Bedford after English.
He's my first cousin.
Was that right?
Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
Floyd was a very popular policeman and knew the county and did a real good job. When he got transferred, he was replaced by, I can't think of the guy's name, but he was a hard ass. He was going to straighten us out and keep us from doing anything wrong. Later years, I'm sorry to say, he got killed in a car chase. Can't think of his name now though, but I know he was real tough. He wasn't going to be friendly to anybody.
About what year would that have been that he took over?
Well, it would have been in between 1950 when I graduated and 1953 when I went into the Air Force, so sometime in between there.
You know, Floyd Tony was a navigator on a B-52 and got shot down over Germany during World War II and was taken prisoner. And a funny thing happened it's been about 20 years, about 20 years ago. My Aunt Irene Cummins passed away, and that was his mother-in-law, okay? I went to the funeral and went to her house, and Floyd's two daughters were there, Patty and I forget the name of the other one. They lived down around Evansville. And they were going through some drawers, and Patty pulled out a letter and said, "Floyd, this letter's to you, and it's not been opened." And he looked at it, and it was to a prisoner of war camp in 1944 in Germany. And the Germans had put a stamp on it that said "no longer here." I think it was in English. And it came back to Irene, his mother-in-law, never opened it. It was from his wife, Mildred. So he opened it right there in front of me. and tears started streaming down his face. There's Floyd Tony, big tough state cop. And it was from Mildred, who since had passed away, and telling him how much she loved him and their little daughter missed him and hoped you were being treated okay. And he said the reason that letter didn't find him is because they were getting squeezed from both sides, and they were moving him from one prisoner of war camp to another prisoner of war camp. They moved about 3 times until finally they liberated him. I thought that
Now,
was,
I'm missing the timeline here, Vic.
this
You
is
said that
about,
was in the Second World War.
yeah, he was a
That's not the
prisoner of
Floyd
war.
Tony. That's not the Floyd Tony I knew.
Well, Floyd Tony, the state trooper, he became a state trooper later, and he was married to Mildred Cummings.
But he married Mildred Cummings after that. He was just dating Mildred Cummings when I was there.
Well,
If I'm thinking of the right person.
you must be thinking of the wrong person, because he was married during World War II. Married to Mildred Cummings.
Vic, that wouldn't have been a B-52, more like a 17 or a 29, probably.
Probably right.
17.
When I said B-52, I thought, probably not. That's probably
Probably a
no
17.
propeller-driven plane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were several POWs, and I think we talked about this once before, from our area. Arnold Vogelsong's brother. What was his name?
Don.
Don or Ronald?
Don.
Don was the oldest.
Don was a German prisoner of war.
And then Jackie Apple. No? Jackie, somebody, he became postmaster out at Caswell. Jackie Enlow. And then there was Bobby Welch, was a prisoner. Lived up near the Thornberry place out past Methodist Church, where the carved stone is. Lived real close there, maybe across the road. And I see we've lost, Jeremy, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
We don't see you, and we don't see Michael.
Yeah, I suppose.
And my screen says, new software is available from Apple. This update includes security improvements and adds support for new devices. But anyway, as long as you can hear us, I guess that's okay.
Yeah, I can see and hear everybody. I don't know, is that a pop-up that came up on your screen, Vic, and maybe blocked some of the?
Yeah, it covers half of my screen here.
Oh.
Yeah, it's covered. I don't see Mike.
Can you move it?
I don't know. I want to have my daughter come over.
Yeah, maybe
Probably
you can.
just on my side here.
Yeah, we see you
She's gonna
fine.
check. She's going to see if she can.
Everybody lean to the right.
Okay, my daughter Teresa is trying to figure it out right here. She knows a little bit more than I do about
Not
technology. Quite a bit more. Hey, now she did it. How
All
about
right.
that? All right. We got full views now. Okay, I was at an antique shop 6 or 8 years ago, and I saw a booklet in the antique shop. It was entitled, here, Manual of the Public Schools of Crawford County, Indiana, 1894-95. So I went ahead and bought it. Since then, I made a copy of it, and I donated the original to the Crawford County Library in English. It's got some interesting things in it. And let me read you one thing here. Superintendent of schools, I don't know his name right now, but he says, so many people object to a county superintendent getting $4 per day, never thinking this is the least amount paid to any county officer, and never remembering that his expenses are by far the heaviest. In the olden days, when the county superintendent boarded around with the teachers, expenses were not so high. But let me list the expenses. Board, $1. When he would visit a school, there were like maybe 35 schools in Crawford County, scattered all over the place. Board for my horse, 75 cents. Hiring my horse, 50 cents. Discount by county order, 30 cents. Anyway, total expenses were $2.55. Salary was $4. So only made $1.12 a day while he was county superintendent. So he wanted everybody to know that things weren't as good as they thought it was. $4 a day.
Well, you can't analyze those things without matching them to costs today. You know, multiply those by 20 and you'd come closer to
Yeah,
what the actual cost.
we understand that, but we'd rather not go there. It makes it a more interesting story.
Oh, everything- it seems like everything.
Okay, now there's names in here that I'll read to you. And some of these names I remember. School board, J.H. Lyons, J.H. Luckett. We remember him.
John Luckett.
John
John
Luckett.
Old man. He also owned English Water Company.
He did, didn't he? Willie Johnson. Don't know him. I did see a Flanigan in here at one place. Where was that now? Okay. Okay, here's the graduates in 1893. Sterling Township. Now, Jeremy, that includes English. Sterling Township. Alice Smith, Ebby Hillary, John Spears. Now, I remember John Spears. I think, didn't he become a doctor at Paoli? Dr. Spears?
There was a Dr. Spears in Philly, yeah,
I think that was him.
probably so.
Wilford Megenity. Now, I do know who that was. He left after he got out of high school, went west, and kind of faded out. But we have talked over, Doug and I at one time talked to his great-grandchildren a few years ago. E.W. Bennett, John Brown, Claude McMahon, Charles Tillery, Elmer Longus, Lily Brown, Harry Wells, Ethel Mathers. Well, those are some names. Occasionally, see, this goes way back. This is 130 years ago. So some of the names I remember from some of the old timers that lived around when we were kids here.
Vic, what relation was that Megenity to you?
Okay, he was a son of my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather, Elijah Frank Megenity, had, now you remember George Megenity? George Megenity was my granddad who lived in English, and he had like three brothers, John Will, George, Wilford. There were about 5 boys and a couple girls. I'm forgetting their names now. And Elijah Frank lived to be pretty old. He lived up about 1920 when he passed away. Now, Elijah Frank, I sent away, and I think you guys probably know this, I sent away the National Archives and got records of his Civil War duties, where he was stationed and so forth. And it was very interesting. He had, I'd always heard he got wounded down near Atlanta, Georgia with Sherman's army. And I found out he didn't get wounded with a bullet. He got food poisoning from eating rancid horse meat. They found a dead horse, and he and a couple of other guys, and they ate from that dead horse and got real sick. He got so sick that he was shipped back to Louisville on a train and recovered in Louisville, and then was mustered out in Louisville. But do you guys know where they used to have the old Civil War reunion grounds? before down by the park, down by Old Man English. It was when you're getting ready to go down over the hill where Bill Boss Farm used to be, and now there's a golf course. On the right, there's a wooded area. Marcus Lane used to live across the road, if you remember where he lived. And across the road, my dad told me that's where this Civil War veterans would hold their annual reunion. And eventually they moved down to the park. And that's we always called it the reunion. We didn't know why. We thought it was because people were getting together in the 1950s and 60s, but no, started with Civil War reunions. One of the pictures that I finally located from the reunion grounds was a picture of probably about 40 or 50 old grizzled Civil War veterans. Picture was taken about 1895. And in the middle of those pictures was a black lady, Lucy Higgs Nichols. And she now is one of the most famous citizens of New Albany. A couple of other people and I did research on her. And we drove to Bolivar, Tennessee, where she ran away as a runaway slave. We took another trip to Corinth, Mississippi, where she was held for a while as a slave. And we found out she was born in Pennsylvania. And she ran into a group of Crawford County, Harrison County, and Floyd County soldiers, Indiana 23rd Indiana Infantry. And since they found out that she could minister to the sick and wounded, cook and clean and sew, they kept her. She was with them at the Battle of Vicksburg and all through the South when they were finishing the war up. And they even brought her up to Washington, D.C. And she marched. We think she was the only black lady that marched down Pennsylvania Avenue in review to President Johnson at the time. Abe Lincoln had been the sheriff then. And then she couldn't read and write. She couldn't do anything. So the boys from New Albany area said, well, come on back to New Albany and we'll see that you're well taken care of. Came back and she spent the rest of her life in New Albany. And there's a permanent exhibit on her account in the Carnegie Center Museum. And she's really an extraordinary lady. And they've carved a big 9-ton statue of her behind the Underground Railroad Church in New Albany. Looks like she's stepping out of the stone, kind of like Martin Luther King. And very impressive. So next time you come to New Albany, I'll tell you more about Lucy Higgs Nichols and show you her statue and so forth. Anyway.
Now, what is the status of her story being made into a film?
That's kind of in the works. The director of the Carnegie Center asked me what I thought about that. And I said, well, I think that would be wonderful. It really is the makings of a movie. It really is.
Maybe Mike will remember, but when we used to run an advertisement announcing the annual reunion, it started off by talking about that it was the old soldiers something reunion. Do you remember what that was, Mike?
No.
It started off with old soldiers, and then I don't remember the next few words, and then reunion at the end of it.
Let's talk about the reunion.
Old soldiers never die. They just smell that way.
No, he's talking about when you were printing it up in the paper
Yeah, I don't
to
remember.
announce the reunion.
I don't remember.
It was mostly speeches, political speeches, and that kind of thing initially.
My dad remembered going with his grandfather. That would have been my great-grandfather, Elijah Frank Megenity. He was just a young fellow then. And he said they'd have big, long tables with big pots of soup beans and baked cornbread. And all the veterans got to have free food. That sounds like that would have been fun.
And all the sulfur water you wanted to drink.
Probably, yeah. And you know, that's nature's cure-all.
So they say.
That's why. Jeremy, have you ever been to West Baden, Indiana?
They sure have. French Lick and West Baden, that all was built up around the miracle sulfur water.
Yes, sir. You got that right. And the big domed hotel.
Yes.
Woo.
Actually, Uncle John was telling a story about that. Maybe that was just last week, because he had remembered you sang inside it was the French Lick, not the West Baden.
Right, the French Lick Hotel. Yeah, I was a member of the band there for a while.
Yeah.
That was a pretty grand place back in those days. I
Yeah,
guess it's pretty nice now too.
Both hotels have been completely redone, and both of them are excellent. Of course, I like the dome one better because when it was built, it was the largest unsupported dome in the world.
Yeah, I remember.
Kidding.
Then they built the Houston Astrodome back maybe 40 years ago, and that surpassed it. But up until then, that was set a record.
Do you remember the name of water they sold at French Lick?
Sure do. Pluto
When
water.
you
Pluto
remember-
water.
Do you remember the advertising slogan?
Uh,
When nature won't, Pluto will.
When nature won't, Pluto will. Yeah. Yeah.
I was trying to recall the name of the band leader there, and I wrote a message to the Chamber of Commerce in French Lick to see if they knew anybody who could remember his name. I think his first name was Benny or Bunny, and he was a keyboardist. He had an electronic keyboard, an organ, and a piano, and then there were 7 other members in the orchestra. And it was a good bunch. It was a good band, and we played. It was in the dining room, and all the people that were in there, they were pretty well off people. They were dressed really well, and it was a pretty neat place. One of my favorite memories.
It seems like the archivist of the Crawford County Historical Society might be able to help with that. I know it's a stretch.
Well, I'm gonna put my earphones on. My yard guys are working, and they're running their big equipment, so I can't hear.
Well, I should mention to you guys while I'm thinking about it, this was a project that the Historical Society, well, it's a stalled project, but originally it was to be released with a couple years ago. I guess it would have been 2018, the bicentennial of the county. It's called the First Families Project, and on the Historical Society's website, there's still information about that, and it is going to happen, and there is still time to submit, basically tracking your family back to the census of 1840. If you can track your people to being in Crawford County, which really, I guess was also Harrison County up until that time, you can be included in this First Families listing that will eventually come out. So if any of you have not contributed to that and can trace your lineage back to 1840, you can still contribute. I did it for the Flanagans. So the Flanagans are set. I didn't do it for the Thornberrys, but I did it for the Flanagans.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay, Jeremy, when did the Flanagans first appear in Crawford County?
Well, I stopped at 1840 when I could show that. I stopped, but I mean, our family has, Uncle John, Granddad, I guess their sister Kathy. I mean, there's definitely family members who do quite a bit of research. Paula, I guess. So, well, I've got a lot of family. Well, and Granddad's got a bin of physical hard copy family genealogy. But I've got I've got some family trees and other electronic documentation, but I don't know the answer to that. Uncle John would probably have a better idea out of anybody here how far the Flanagans go back in Indiana.
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, that's what I say too.
Yeah, my yard guys are making a lot of noise out there, but I can hear you well. But can you hear me? Can you hear the buzzsaw going and all that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you okay. We can hear them,
Okay.
but it's not troubling.
Okay, good.
I've got a kind of general prompt question, and I think I want to keep it general just to see kind of what your responses are. But what is your recollection of what a typical Saturday in English was when you were growing up? What did that consist of in the town of English? A Saturday, for example.
Well, the different generations will certainly give different answers. But let me start.
Yeah.
Farmers with horse-drawn wagons bringing their goods into town. The streets terribly crowded with equal numbers of horse-drawn wagons and cars and pickup trucks. Lots and lots and lots of people walking around the streets. Very, very busy. In fact, I wrote an essay one time as a part of an English class, and I referred to it as crowded as Saturday in a small town.
Yeah, I agree. It was a busy time.
A lot of people went to the movie on Saturday night.
Yeah. You do your shopping. Some of the folks would bring eggs in to sell, milk. A lot of milk cans were brought in to sell their raw milk.
And then go to the dance in the pavilion down in the park at night.
Yep.
And I didn't know until later in life that the music they played was Irish.
Really?
All the square dance music was Irish derived, yeah.
Amos Butt. Remember Amos Butt?
I remember Amos.
He was.
And I remember Nellie. Do you remember Nellie?
Yeah.
Nellie was when first day of class, the teacher was reading everybody's name and making sure she knew it. And she was reading along, and she said, "And this is Nellie. Now, is that Butte?" And Nellie said, "No, just Butt, Nellie Butt." She was used to it.
I went with my grandmother and grandfather on more than one occasion when my grandfather would buy feed from the feed store back on Church Street, down from Guy Goldman's service station. You know, there was a feed store there. Remember that?
Yeah.
Near the creek. Now, why would my grandmother insist that she go when my grandfather was picking up big bags of feed? Now, who knows the answer to that?
She wanted to choose the feed sack design.
You got that
Right.
exactly right.
That's right.
She would say, Lonnie, get this one over here. Maybe it had flowers on it. Lonnie, I want this one over here. So she'd use those feed sacks, and it was good cotton, I guess, and make dresses, shirts. When I graduated from high school, she gave me 2 pairs of undershorts made out of feed sacks.
Those feed sacks obviously were made for that purpose. They were made to be.
But they were, yeah.
They were made to be used after the feed was gone. Yeah, for sure.
I think you're right, yeah.
Guy Longus ran that mill. I used to stand and watch them fill up those feed sacks, those big long chutes.
Yeah.
And the grain or whatever would be shooting down the chutes and filling the sack up. That was fascinating.
And that building still stands today. I'm not
Yeah.
Does it?
Yes, sir. Right next to the railroad track.
Oh, I'm surprised.
It still stands. Locked up. My daughter and I were down there last spring, I think, and we were looking in the windows. We'd love to go in and see what's in there now, but couldn't tell.
Now, I asked that question about Saturdays in English because I was down in Sulphur last weekend visiting my grandmother for her birthday, and she told about how her grandmother, and they lived in the country, they lived in Riddle. On Saturdays, they'd go into English, and her grandmother called it trading day.
It
And
was.
Vic had mentioned eggs, and my grandmother said that her grandmother would bring in eggs, and my grandmother doesn't know if if her grandmother sold the eggs and then used the money to buy other things she needed, or if it really was bartering. But
Noisy out there.
she said her grandmother always referred to it as trading day.
Yeah, yeah. And there were several little grocery stores in town. For a little town like that, there was McMail Grocery, Johnson Grocery. I can think of 4 groceries, maybe another one, and every one of them would allow you to run up a tab on their book. And at the end of the month, they expected you to pay. So I don't know where they probably got some people that didn't pay. But my mother would send me down to remember Harv Hashman?
Oh, yeah.
That building then became a grocery store. It was kind of a general store when Harv Hashman had it, but it became Bob Bledsoe had it. And when I went in that grocery store one time, I couldn't believe it. He had push carts. You could push these carts around and pick Wheaties or whatever it was off and put them in the cart. First time I ever saw anything like that in my life. I thought, that's pretty neat. Then you go out and he'd tab it up. And if you didn't have any money, he'd put it on the bill.
Now, Robertson's Grocery, right there on the corner, across from the bank, they would deliver food.
Would they really?
Yeah, so you could order stuff and they'd deliver it to the house.
Now, there was one Robinson up near the Packard showroom where Bob's dad worked. He was blind, and you could buy groceries from him. And the story goes that he could tell whether you gave him a $5 bill or a $1 bill. I don't hardly believe that.
No.
Have you heard that before, Gordon?
No. You can't read with your fingers, sorry.
Okay.
A lot of these blind people who can read like that aren't totally blind. I'm pretty
You're
convinced.
right, yeah.
That could have been a story he told so that people would not cheat him.
Maybe.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be.
Well, we haven't talked about the election. That's probably good.
Remember, this is being recorded. I can stop the recording, but
Okay.
just a reminder.
I tell you this, there's more people that have gotten so angry. I've never seen anything like it before. Even family members.
Makes me worried. Makes me worried about the country. How can we make it if we are that silly?
I don't know, John. I noticed Hawaii, of course, went blue. Is that?
Yeah, but we still had a Trump demonstration marching around the Capitol yesterday morning.
Did you really? Oh boy. Well,
it's like a religion. It's changed from being an act of social responsibility to an act of arguing my political religion, and you're not allowed to question it.
yeah, really does.
That's very, very bad.
Well, I was hoping that from you all in your generation, you would have some sage suggestion for how we move forward, but I guess we're all equally silent, huh?
I think we are.
Yeah.
Well, I've got sage suggestions, but it doesn't simplify it down to just a few words. It would take an essay. One of the things is we have to learn. No, I keep saying to myself, don't say we have to, because we don't have to do anything, but we would do well to remove all this stuff from our discourse that is a trigger for other people, for the people on the other side. we've said so many things that are just making fun of the other side, making jokes. And certainly certain of the politicians on each side have given us a lot of room to do that, but it doesn't do any good when you do that. It just drives the other side farther away. And
Yes, it does.
I was ashamed to see in all these, all the people that were having a good time yesterday, waving flags and burning hats and sitting on top of lampposts. And I wanted to call up the TV station and say, take your camera off of those people. Don't reward them by showing them on national television. That's the wrong thing to do.
My own family has had heated disagreement on that subject, and I sent a message just this morning to my niece in Florida and said, Diane, family love should always transcend petty political disagreement.
Good point.
There's nothing to be gained by that kind of disagreement and especially anger. That's just not right.
That's certainly true.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
the good thing-
Leslie lives in Oregon, and she's surrounded by Trump people who are out of their minds at the fact that they lost.
yeah.
And she's having a really tough time even conversing with her neighbors and her friends.
My sister-in-law, Frank's widow, was in California a couple of weeks ago for her granddaughter's wedding, and I was talking with her today, and she said that it was very interesting there because within the family out there, they couldn't even bring up the topic.
Yeah.
It was just too inflammatory.
And that's a shame. Politics is such an interesting thing to argue about. But it's not fun unless you deal with facts.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's become a lost art.
I think there's a big difference between debate and argument.
Oh yeah.
I like good debate, especially if it, as you say, based on fact instead of opinion, or opinion based on fact, at least.
But it's hard to base things on facts when the argument is about whether it's a fact or not.
That's true.
Yeah.
It depends on what the definition of is.
Right.
Yeah, well, I imagine that every family has experienced strife through all of this, so I think we can all identify with that struggle.
I think a big part of the problem is the lack of straightforward reporting. I think the media has churned up a lot of disagreement.
Well, because we've allowed the media to become an entertainment group, because we don't buy newspapers that give good, straight, plain facts. We buy newspapers that give argument and excitement, and people are ragging at each other. So let's take some, I mean, not we individually, but the people who buy newspapers and watch the news. They reward the news vendors for putting exciting things in, not for putting truthful things in.
Wasn't the old saying, John, that good news doesn't sell newspapers?
I'm sure that's right.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work because we have to consult a number of different sources.
That's the problem.
Of media.
Right.
True.
It's a lot easier just to deal with gossip. But if it bleeds, it leads. It's the old, still reliable idea of what are you going to put on the headline? Whatever is the most exciting and will stir up the most noise.
And that's in sales work, that's known as the hook, of course. So
Right.
It's whatever draws attention.
Right.
That's right. Even now in emails, what you put in the subject line, I mean, from a marketing standpoint, if it's sales related, there's
Right.
keep it to 7 words or less. And it's like Gordon said, the hook, and then there's avoiding certain terms that get flagged as spam. So there's such a strategy to, I guess, communication. And that's a whole business of its own. But yeah, it doesn't help us get to the straight facts of things.
Well, I for a long time thought that maybe education would do it. We could educate people to be better than, but that hasn't worked very well. I think partly because the educators are so poor at it. But even when they're good at it, it doesn't seem to be terribly effective.
Well, after the last 8 months or whatever it's been, with so much going online and virtual with schools and learning, I wonder when we come out the other side of the pandemic, if there's going to be a major restructuring to how education is approached in the United States and in the world, rather than, focusing on the physical school buildings, if there's going to be just a total revamping of how to reach the most people with the best information and convey that to them.
There is such a thing as social evolution. And the way evolution works is completely non-rational. What happens in a case like this? We've had, the term punctuated equilibrium, one of the hypotheses of development. What happens with something like this, where a whole bunch of things are thrown in to disturb the regular system, then all sorts of different things are tried as solutions. And we don't succeed with the ones that are the best thought out. We succeed with the ones that actually get copied. And so we just have to wait and see what do we copy. And of course, working online will copy until the sun blows up and ruins our communication satellites, and then we'll have to do something else.
I spend a good part of my time on Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Team. I belong to a lot of organizations, Shriners Hospital. I had 5 hours of 5 meetings last Tuesday, 4 committees and 1 board meeting with the Shriners Hospital, and the Indiana Masonic Home Foundation, and various organizations I belong to. I don't believe that the discussions are as effective on those platforms as they are in person.
That's right.
And I think there's probably several reasons for that. One is a lot of the people are not familiar with the technology yet. And just like ours right now, it would be so much better face to face. But we still accomplish something. And I think, and I want to thank Jeremy very definitely for getting this all together and facilitated, because this is like a breath of fresh air to rehash the things that we knew 50, 60 years ago. It's wonderful. And I'm happy to be with all of you.
Good. Well, I'm very impressed at how everyone has adapted, and that it's pretty phenomenal. It's not the same as being in person, but from Hawaii to Indiana to Virginia, that we can all communicate and see each other and hear each other and share. And so I'm very happy. I continue to learn a lot from you gentlemen, and it's a pleasure to hear the stories. So I'm glad we're doing it. And that I was looking at the calendar, and the second Sunday of December.
Yeah, that's good. Right in there. That's good.
The second Sunday of December is the 13th. So it looks like we're on schedule for Sunday, December 13th to do this all over again.
Very good.
That's good.
So
Sounds good to me.
if any, Gordon, are you in touch with Melvin Beasley? Because
I am not. I don't have his contact information. I'd like to be.
Yeah,
I called Melvin right after our last meeting almost a month ago. And he said, well, it just slipped my mind. He said, I've got all the information I need. He said, I'll try to get on there next time. Well, he didn't make it. I talked to Bub Scowden today, and he said his computer apparatus wasn't working just right. He was going to try to get organized to get on next month. So maybe we'll get another person or two next month.
He could use cell phone, maybe.
He could, couldn't he?
Yeah.
I'll tell him that.
Yeah, very good. I don't have Melvin's contact information. I meant to get it from him, and I just neglected to do so before we ended the meetings that he joined. And of course, the first time we did this, Della was trying to connect, so I always include her on the invitation because I do have her email, but I know it wasn't a successful technological result for her the first time, but just a reminder that everyone's welcome to invite others who might be interested in this.
I have, by the way, spoken with Della a couple of times since her daughter died, and I think she's handling that reasonably well.
Good.
It's very sad that it happened, but she told me about the funeral and so on, and she's a pretty resilient person. I think she'll be fine.
That's good.
Maybe she'll tell a joke the next time.
Yeah, I'll have to stop the recording again. All right, guys. Well, it's been an hour, so good to see each of you.
John's giving us a tour.
I'm giving you a tour of my area where my house is.
All right. We'll watch that before we call it a night.
Yeah, see how bright and sunny it is. I noticed, Granddad and I were on our family Zoom for the hour leading up to this Zoom meeting, and he had bright sun behind him in the background. And then I saw, as we started this meeting, it had gotten dark. Of course, I'm still in Eastern time zone, but I'm as far west as he is east, really, in Virginia. So I still had bright sun here practically when I was looking at darkness behind him. So it's kind of neat to see. Are you going to show us something, Uncle John, or are we just?
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Michael,
All right,
take care of
gentlemen.
yourself.
Everyone,
I'm
take
just walking
care.
away from all the noise.
Thank you.
Later,
All
Michael.
right. Thank you, guys.
care.
Bye bye.
Okay, take care.
All right, see you, Jeremy.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Gordon.
Leave it up.
See you. Bye.